They hanged the young Apache woman for loving a white man, but he wouldn't let her die. The sun rose slowly over the rugged lands of the Apache reservation, casting golden light on the rolling hills and dusty paths that wound through the village. In the quiet of the morning, the sounds of daily life began to stir. Children's laughter mixed with the clatter of cooking pots, and the soft hum of women weaving blankets filled the air. Among all the villagers, there was a young woman named Ayana. Her dark hair flowed like a river at her back, and her eyes carried a brightness that seemed to reflect the sky itself. From a young age, she had been taught the ways of her people, the stories, the dances, the responsibilities that came with being Apache. She knew the land, the animals, and the stars in ways that made her feel connected to something larger than herself. Ayana's days were filled with routine, yet her heart often wandered beyond the boundaries of her home. She would sit by the edge of the forest, listening to the birds and imagining a world she had never seen. Her curiosity was insatiable. She wanted to know about the world beyond the reservation, beyond the mountains and rivers that marked the edge of her life. The elders often warned her that such thoughts were dangerous, that curiosity could lead a young woman astray, but Ayana could not help herself. The world called to her. One day, a young man arrived in the village. His name was Thomas, and he came from a town several miles away. He was unlike anyone Ayana had ever met. His skin was pale and his hair was light, but his eyes held warmth and kindness. Thomas had come to trade supplies with the villagers, bringing food, tools, and other items that were not always easy to find. When he first met Ayana, he was struck by her presence, her quiet confidence, the way she moved with grace, and the spark of intelligence in her gaze. Ayana, in turn, felt a strange pull toward him, a feeling she had never experienced before. At first, their interactions were cautious. Thomas approached with respect, understanding that the villagers were wary of outsiders. He spoke slowly, learning a few words of their language, and showed genuine interest in their customs. Ayana observed him from a distance, curious but careful. She had been warned about strangers, about the dangers they might bring, yet something about Thomas felt different. He was patient, kind, and willing to listen. Over time, their paths crossed more often. Thomas would come to the edge of the village to speak with the elders, and Ayana would find reasons to be nearby. Slowly, a friendship began to grow. They shared stories. Thomas spoke of his life in the town, of markets and fields, of people who lived in houses made of brick and wood. Ayana spoke of the land she loved, of the animals she cared for, of the traditions that had been passed down through generations. They laughed together, sharing small moments of joy. In those moments, the boundaries of their world seemed to fade. They were no longer just a young Apache woman and a white man. They were simply two people who understood and cared for each other. As the seasons changed, so did their relationship. The playful glances and shared smiles evolved into something deeper. They began to meet in secret, walking along hidden trails through the forest, talking for hours about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Ayana felt a warmth in her heart that she had never known, and Thomas felt a sense of peace and belonging he had never found in his own town. They spoke of leaving the reservation together, imagining a life where they could be free to love each other without fear or judgment. But the reality of their situation was never far away. The elders of the tribe were strict, and their traditions were deeply rooted. A relationship like theirs was seen as a betrayal, something that could bring shame or danger to the community. Ayana understood this, and the thought of disappointing her family and people weighed heavily on her. Yet her heart could not turn away from Thomas. Likewise, Thomas knew the risks. If they were discovered, the consequences could be severe. Still, he could not deny his feelings for Ayana, nor could he imagine a life without her by his side. Their love, however, was not without small challenges. They had to be cautious, always aware of who might be watching. Every meeting was carefully planned. They chose quiet spots in the forest, far from the eyes of neighbors and elders. They learned to read the signs, the distant sound of a horse, the shadow of a passerby, and would hide until the coast was clear. The thrill of secrecy added intensity to their bond, but it also brought fear. Every moment together was precious, yet fragile, as if one wrong move could shatter everything. Despite the danger, Ayanna and Thomas found comfort in each other. They shared simple joys, a walk along the river, a quiet meal under the trees, a song sung softly at twilight. In those moments, the world outside seemed to disappear. Their love was a refuge, a safe space where they could be themselves without judgment or fear. And yet, even in these quiet moments, the shadow of reality loomed. They knew that the approval of the elders was unlikely, that whispers of their meetings could turn into anger, and that their lives might never be simple or easy. Ayanna also began to reflect on her own feelings and her connection to her heritage. She loved her people, her land, and her family. She did not want to abandon them, but she could not ignore the love she felt for Thomas. This inner conflict made her stronger and more determined. She began to think not only of herself, but also of the possibility of bridging two worlds, her world and Thomas's. She dreamed of a future where love could transcend fear and tradition, where people could see the value of kindness and understanding over prejudice and rigid rules. Thomas, too, faced his own struggles. He had grown up in a society that often judged those who were different, and he knew the consequences of breaking social norms. Yet with Ayanna, he felt a sense of purpose and courage he had never known. He began to understand the strength it took to live according to one's own heart, even in the face of danger. His respect and admiration for Ayanna grew daily, and he became determined to protect her, not only from the judgment of others but from the harsh realities of the world they lived in. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They learned each other's habits, fears, and dreams. Thomas noticed how Ayanna would pause when she heard the wind shift, or how her eyes lit up when she spoke of the land she loved. Ayanna noticed Thomas's gentle ways, the care he took in helping the villagers, and the way he listened, truly listened to her thoughts and feelings. They became attuned to each other, understanding each other in ways that words alone could not express. Yet, in the back of their minds, the ever-present danger lingered. Every smile shared, every touch, every whispered word was a rebellion against the rules imposed upon them. They knew that their love was forbidden, that the elders' patience had limits, and that one day they might be forced to confront the consequences of their choices. But for now, they lived in the moments they could steal from the world, a stolen laugh, a hidden glance, a hand held in secret. The story of Ayanna and Thomas in this first chapter is not only about love but about courage, hope, and the human spirit. It is about two people daring to follow their hearts despite the dangers surrounding them. It is about the beginnings of a journey that would test their strength, loyalty, and resilience. In the quiet of the Apache lands, beneath the vast sky and among the ancient mountains, a love had begun, a love that would challenge tradition, defy fear, and ultimately set the stage for a story that would not be forgotten. The days passed quietly at first, but the gentle rhythm of life on the Apache reservation could not last forever. Whispers began to travel through the village like sparks on dry grass. At first, they were soft, almost imperceptible, neighbors noticing Ayanna and Thomas walking together in the forest, small glances shared at the edge of the marketplace. But soon, the whispers grew louder. The elders, who had long maintained the traditions and rules of the tribe, were the first to hear these rumors. They took the matter seriously, for nothing threatened the balance of their community more than a young woman breaking the laws of their people. Ayanna and Thomas were aware that the attention they were drawing could be dangerous. They had always been careful, choosing quiet paths through the forest, meeting far from the eyes of the villagers. Yet despite their caution, the reality of their situation began to press upon them. The feeling of being watched, even from a distance, made Ayana's heart pound with anxiety. She loved Thomas more with each passing day, but she also understood that love alone could not protect them. The elders were strict, and their decisions were final. One afternoon, while Ayana was helping her mother weave a new blanket, she noticed a group of villagers standing at the edge of the clearing, speaking in hushed tones and glancing in her direction. The feeling of dread she had tried to ignore now became impossible to deny. Thomas had warned her that their love was dangerous, but facing the reality of it brought a new, sharper fear. She felt the weight of the village's judgment pressing down on her, and for the first time, she realized just how serious the consequences could be. Thomas, meanwhile, faced his own struggles. He had never been fully accepted by the villagers, even before the rumors began. His pale skin and foreign ways made him an outsider, someone who was tolerated rather than embraced. The villagers' growing disapproval of his relationship with Ayana intensified his sense of isolation. Yet, he refused to let fear dictate his actions. He knew that running away or hiding forever would not solve the problem. If they were discovered, they would have to face it together, no matter how difficult or frightening the consequences might be. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. One morning, while Thomas was helping a trader unload supplies near the village edge, an elder approached him. The elder's face was stern, his eyes heavy with disappointment and warning. He spoke in measured tones, explaining that Ayana's actions were being watched and that the village did not approve of their meetings. Thomas listened carefully, nodding respectfully, but he felt a fire of determination building inside him. He understood the elder's words, yet he could not abandon Ayana. She was not just the woman he loved. She was a person of courage and integrity, and he refused to let her face danger alone. Meanwhile, Ayana's own family began to notice the changes in her behavior. She had grown more distant, more cautious, and her eyes often seemed to search for someone or something in the distance. Her mother, who loved her deeply, sensed that something was wrong. One evening, after the work of the day was done, her mother asked her gently to share her worries. Ayana struggled with her words, her heart torn between honesty and fear of disappointing her family. Finally, she admitted that she had been seeing Thomas. Her mother's reaction was one of concern and sadness, but also of understanding. She knew the risks, and she worried for her daughter's safety, but she also knew that Ayana could not simply stop loving someone who had become so important to her life. As the elders grew more aware of the relationship, the whispers of the villagers turned into murmurs of disapproval. The elders called a council to discuss the matter, inviting only the most respected members of the tribe to participate. In the council, they debated what should be done. Some spoke of mercy, urging that young love was not always a crime and that perhaps guidance, rather than punishment, could help the young couple. Others were unyielding, insisting that breaking tradition could not be tolerated and that Ayana's actions threatened the very foundation of their community. Ayana and Thomas sensed the tension rising. The village felt smaller now, every path more dangerous, every glance more loaded with judgment. Their secret meetings continued, but now they were filled with a mix of joy and fear. The forest, which had once felt like a safe refuge, now felt like a place of hiding. Yet they could not give up on each other. They found moments of happiness in the small things, a shared smile, the sound of laughter, the simple pleasure of walking together along the riverbank. Each of these moments strengthened their bond and reminded them why they were willing to risk so much for love. The danger became even more real when a neighbor, who had long been suspicious, reported seeing the couple in the forest. This person had been watching from a distance for weeks, and now, convinced that something needed to be done, went straight to the elders. The elders listened carefully to the account and began to plan their response. The village, which had once been a place of safety and routine, now became a stage for tension and fear. Iana and Thomas could feel it in every glance, every whisper, every shadow that seemed to follow them through the trees. Despite the growing threat, the couple refused to give up. They began to make more concrete plans for the future, imagining a place where they could live without fear. They spoke of distant towns, of open plains, of a life where they could love each other freely. These dreams gave them hope, but they also reminded them of the urgency of their situation. Each day brought new challenges and the constant threat of discovery. Every moment together was precious, yet the shadow of the village's disapproval hung heavily over them. Thomas took steps to prepare for the worst. He learned the terrain, finding safe paths and hiding places in case they needed to escape quickly. He gathered supplies quietly, speaking to trusted allies who might help them if danger came. Iana, too, prepared herself mentally and emotionally, knowing that the path ahead would be filled with obstacles. She practiced patience and courage, learning to read the signs of the world around her, the approach of footsteps, the rustle of leaves, the distant sound of horses, so that she could act quickly if necessary. The story of their love, which had once been filled with innocence and quiet joy, now became a story of resilience and courage. They learned to navigate fear with careful planning, to balance hope with reality, and to protect each other in ways that went beyond simple words. Every day was a test, every moment a lesson in trust and loyalty. Yet through it all, their love remained unshaken. They drew strength from each other, and in that strength, they found a sense of purpose and determination that neither had known before. The tension reached its peak one evening when the elders, after much debate, decided that Iana's actions could no longer be ignored. They sent a warning to her family, making it clear that the situation had reached a critical point. Iana felt a cold fear settle over her, yet she also felt a strange clarity. She knew that hiding forever was no longer possible. She would have to confront the situation, and she would do so with Thomas by her side. The decision brought them closer together, even as it marked the beginning of a journey filled with danger, uncertainty, and the ultimate test of their love. In the quiet of that night, beneath the wide sky and among the ancient mountains, Iana and Thomas sat together, holding hands and speaking softly. They knew that the world around them was changing, that the whispers and warnings would soon become actions, and that the life they had known would never be the same. Yet in that moment, they found solace in each other's presence. They understood that the road ahead would be difficult, but they also understood that their love had the power to give them courage, to guide them through fear, and to shape their destiny in ways they could not yet imagine. Part 2 of their story is not just about danger and struggle. It is about the choices that define us, the courage that grows in the face of fear, and the power of love to inspire action even when the world seems determined to keep two hearts apart. Iana and Thomas, though surrounded by uncertainty, had discovered that the strength to fight for one another could carry them through the darkest moments, preparing them for the challenges that lay ahead. The air in the village was thick with unease. The whispers that had once been quiet murmurs now echoed in every corner. Every glance felt heavier, every shadow seemed to carry a warning. Iana knew, deep in her heart, that the elders were watching more closely than ever. The small acts of defiance that had once felt harmless, the secret meetings, the hidden smiles, the quiet walks in the forest, now carried dangerous consequences. Fear, sharp and unrelenting, settled into her chest, but so did resolve. She would not abandon the love she had found, nor would she let fear control her life. Thomas was equally aware of the stakes. His heart pounded with anxiety each time he approached Iana's home or walked the forest paths. He had always known that their love was forbidden, but he had hoped that time and understanding might soften the hearts of the elders. Now, hope was no longer enough. He had to act, and he had to act quickly. He spent hours planning, thinking of ways to protect Iana, ways to persuade the elders, ways to escape if the situation turned dire. Every choice he made was weighed against the possibility of failure, yet his determination never wavered. The turning point came one early morning when the first rays of sunlight barely touched the mountaintops. Gianna was gathering herbs near the edge of the forest, her senses alert for any sign of danger. Thomas was nearby, keeping a careful watch. Suddenly, voices called out from the village, harsh, commanding, and filled with anger. Gianna's heart sank as she realized the elders had finally decided to confront her directly. Before she could run, several men appeared, blocking the path back to the village. They had come to bring her to the council to answer for her actions. Fear surged through Gianna, but she held her head high. She knew that running now might only worsen the situation. Thomas approached her quickly, his presence both comforting and urgent. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "We'll face this together." She nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and dread. The men took her by the arms, guiding her toward the heart of the village where the elders waited. Thomas followed as closely as he dared, careful not to incite further anger but determined to stay by her side. At the council, the elders sat in solemn rows, their expressions grave. The village seemed to hold its breath, watching silently as Gianna was brought forward. She stood tall, her eyes meeting those of the elders with a mixture of defiance and respect. She had grown up knowing the importance of tradition, but she also knew that love was not a crime. She spoke quietly but firmly, explaining her feelings for Thomas, the respect she had for her people, and the pain of having to hide her heart. Her words were sincere, filled with honesty and courage, yet she knew that courage alone might not save her. The elders debated fiercely. Some acknowledged her bravery and the purity of her love, suggesting that mercy could be shown. Others were unyielding, insisting that breaking tradition could not go unpunished. They spoke of the rules that had guided their people for generations, of the danger of allowing personal feelings to override communal values. Gianna listened, understanding the weight of their words. She felt a cold fear creep into her heart as the reality became clear. The decision might not go in her favor. Thomas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. He spoke directly to the elders, explaining that he took responsibility for his part in the situation, that he had acted without the intent to harm, and that he wished only to protect Gianna. His courage astonished many in the council. He acknowledged the traditions of the tribe, yet he also pleaded for understanding, for compassion. He spoke not only for himself but for the woman he loved, showing a depth of devotion that was impossible to ignore. Despite Thomas's words, the council remained divided. The elders, who were determined to uphold tradition, insisted that a punishment must be carried out. The punishment they chose was severe. Gianna would face execution by hanging, a sentence meant to serve as a warning to anyone who might break the rules in the future. The word struck Gianna like a physical blow. Her breath caught, and for a moment the world seemed to tilt around her. Yet even in that moment of despair, she refused to give in to panic. She looked at Thomas, her eyes filled with fear but also with trust. She knew he would not abandon her. The villagers watched in tense silence as preparations began. Gianna was brought to a clearing near the center of the village, where a sturdy tree had been chosen for the hanging. The elders moved with solemn determination, tying the rope and ensuring that every detail was in place. Gianna's mind raced, but she forced herself to remain calm, thinking of the small moments she had shared with Thomas, of the love that had given her strength, and of the courage she had discovered within herself. She whispered a quiet prayer to the spirits of the land, asking for guidance, protection, and the strength to face what was coming. Thomas knew he had only moments to act. He could see the fear in Gianna's eyes, the tension in her body, the trembling of her hands. He refused to let the situation end in tragedy. Drawing on every ounce of courage, he stepped forward, speaking loudly and clearly. "Please," he said, She has done no harm. I take responsibility. Let her live. We will leave, and we will ensure that our actions bring no shame to this village." His words were passionate, filled with sincerity and desperation. The elders were taken aback by Thomas's boldness. Some hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure how to respond. The village seemed to hold its collective breath. Yana's heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment the world seemed suspended in uncertainty. Thomas's courage had created a momentary pause, a fragile opening that could determine the course of her life. As the rope was placed around her neck, Ayana felt a surge of fear, but also a strange clarity. She knew that the outcome depended not only on the actions of the elders, but on the love and determination she and Thomas shared. She met his gaze, finding strength in his presence, and for the first time she felt a sense of hope amidst the terror. Then, in a daring and desperate move, Thomas acted. He lunged forward, grabbing Ayana's hand and pulling her close. The crowd gasped, shocked by his audacity. He spoke to the elders with urgency, reminding them of the value of compassion, of the strength of love, and of the courage it took to face difficult choices. His words resonated with some of the villagers, stirring feelings of empathy and understanding that had long been suppressed by rigid tradition. The elders were forced to make a decision. Some remained steadfast, insisting that the punishment must proceed, while others were moved by Thomas's bravery and Ayana's composure. The council was divided, the tension almost unbearable. The villagers watched, unsure of what would happen next, feeling the weight of history and tradition pressing on the moment. Ayana, feeling the rope against her neck and Thomas's hand in hers, closed her eyes for a brief instant. She drew in a deep breath, steadying herself. She had come to understand that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She had also come to realize that love, when true and selfless, could inspire others in ways she had never imagined. In that fleeting moment, she felt a deep connection to Thomas, to her people, and to the larger world around her. As the elders deliberated, Thomas whispered to Ayana, reassuring her. "We will get through this," he said. "No matter what happens, I will not let you face this alone." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of a promise that neither distance, fear, nor danger could break. Ayana clung to that promise, feeling a sense of unity and determination that strengthened her resolve. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the council reached a tentative decision. A compromise, however fragile, was proposed. Ayana's life would be spared, but only under strict conditions. She would remain under the watchful eye of the elders, and any further defiance would be met with immediate consequences. The decision was met with murmurs of relief, though the tension did not fully dissipate. Ayana had survived, but the path ahead remained uncertain and fraught with challenges. In that moment, Thomas and Ayana understood the fragility of their situation. They had been tested in the most extreme way, and though they had survived, the experience had left an indelible mark on both of them. It had shown them the strength of their love, the courage they could summon in the face of fear, and the importance of standing together against the forces that sought to divide them. As they left the clearing hand in hand, the village around them seemed to shift subtly. Some villagers regarded them with newfound respect, recognizing the bravery it took to stand for one's love and beliefs. Others remained cautious, their minds bound by tradition and fear. Yet Ayana and Thomas felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the ultimate threat to their bond and had emerged stronger, more determined, and more united than ever. The events of that day would shape the rest of their lives. The danger had not vanished, but it had illuminated a path forward, a path defined by love, courage, and unwavering loyalty. Ayana and Thomas knew that they would need to navigate the challenges ahead with care, intelligence, and courage. They also knew that no force could diminish the bond they shared, a bond forged in adversity and strengthened by the trials they had faced together. The moment they escaped the council's judgment, Ayanna and Thomas knew that nothing would ever be the same. The narrow alleyways and hidden paths of the village had never seemed more threatening, yet they also held a promise of freedom. Hand in hand, they slipped into the forest as silently as shadows, hearts pounding with fear and determination. Every step they took carried the weight of danger, for the elders had made it clear that disobedience would not be tolerated. Yet the bond between them gave courage, making each step feel slightly lighter, each breath slightly freer. The forest greeted them with both comfort and challenge. The air smelled of pine and earth, carrying a hint of smoke from distant fires. Birds called to each other, and small animals scurried through the underbrush, reminding the young couple of the life that thrived in the wild, indifferent to human judgment. Ayanna's knowledge of the land became their guide. She led Thomas along secret trails and hidden streams, places she had visited as a child but rarely shared. These paths, though difficult to traverse, offered the safest route away from the village, at least for now. They walked for hours, careful not to make noise, careful to leave no trace of their presence. Thomas carried a small bundle of supplies he had prepared in advance: dried meat, water, and a few simple tools. He had studied the forest and learned where they might find shelter if the need arose. Despite the fear pressing on them, they spoke softly, sharing words of encouragement and fleeting moments of laughter. These small exchanges reminded them of why they had risked everything, for a chance to live together, free from the shadow of punishment. Night fell, and with it came new challenges. The forest transformed under the moonlight, casting long shadows that twisted and turned with every breeze. Sounds of nocturnal creatures echoed through the trees, some unfamiliar and startling. Ayanna and Thomas huddled together beneath the protective cover of a large oak, trying to rest, trying to conserve energy for the journey ahead. Thomas whispered words of reassurance, telling Ayanna that they would survive, that their love would guide them through the darkness. She clung to his words, feeling a warmth that shielded her from the cold fear of the unknown. Food and water became their constant concern. The forest, while beautiful, offered only limited resources. Ayanna used her skills to identify edible plants and herbs, while Thomas hunted small game with careful precision. Each meal was a victory, a small triumph against the difficulties of survival. They learned to move quietly, to observe the signs of animals, and to anticipate changes in the weather. Every challenge strengthened their bond, as they relied on each other's knowledge and instincts to navigate a world that seemed indifferent to their struggle. Their journey was not without danger. On more than one occasion, they spotted trackers in the distance, men from the village who had been sent to bring Ayanna back. The fear of being caught pressed on them like a heavy weight. They had to hide, sometimes for hours, crouched beneath thick undergrowth or inside narrow caves. Each encounter tested their patience, courage, and ability to trust one another completely. They began to understand that survival required not only physical skill, but also mental resilience and careful planning. Despite the hardships, they found moments of beauty and hope. Sunlight filtered through the forest canopy, casting patterns on the ground like a gentle reminder of the world's quiet wonders. Streams bubbled over stones, offering clear water and a sense of purity untouched by human cruelty. In these moments, Ayanna and Thomas laughed, shared stories, and sometimes simply held each other in silence. The trials they faced made the small joys feel infinitely more precious, reinforcing their determination to endure whatever lay ahead. Along the journey, they also faced internal struggles. Fear and exhaustion sometimes led to frustration and tension. Arguments flared, only to be followed by apologies and renewed understanding. They discovered that their love was not only tested by the external dangers of the forest and the village, but also by the emotional challenges of surviving together under constant pressure. Through these trials, they grew stronger, learning to communicate openly, to support one another, and to find balance between caution and hope. Iana also found herself reflecting on her heritage and her identity. She loved her people, the traditions, and the land, yet she had chosen a path that defied strict rules. The journey through the forest became a time of self-discovery. She realized that her love for Thomas did not diminish her pride in being Apache. Rather, it expanded her understanding of courage, freedom, and human connection. She began to see that love could be a bridge between worlds, a force capable of inspiring change and challenging injustice, even in the smallest ways. Thomas, too, underwent a transformation. He had always admired Iana, but the journey revealed the depth of his own character. He learned patience, humility, and the value of unwavering loyalty. Every step he took to protect her, every risk he assumed, strengthened his resolve. He understood that love was not only about comfort and companionship, but also about courage, sacrifice, and resilience. Together, they discovered a kind of strength neither had known existed, a power that came from standing side by side against the forces of fear and adversity. The forest journey also brought moments of quiet reflection. At night, lying beneath the stars, they would talk about the world beyond the trees, imagining a life where their love could exist freely. They dreamed of distant towns and open fields, where they could build a home together without fear of judgment or punishment. These dreams fueled their determination, reminding them that their current struggles, though severe, were temporary. The vision of a future together became a guiding light, helping them endure exhaustion, hunger, and fear. At times, they encountered small communities or travelers along the way. These interactions offered lessons and perspectives that enriched their understanding of the world. They learned that kindness could be found even in unexpected places, that strangers could become allies, and that courage often came in quiet, unassuming forms. Each encounter strengthened their hope and reminded them that despite the dangers they had faced, the world was still full of opportunities for love, compassion, and freedom. The journey was long and their bodies grew weary. Blisters, cuts, and bruises were constant reminders of the cost of freedom. Yet with every step, they felt the power of their shared determination. They had faced near capture, harsh terrain, and relentless fear, but they had also discovered resilience, ingenuity, and the unbreakable strength of their love. Each challenge overcome became a testament to their courage and the depth of their bond. Eventually, after days of navigating the forest, avoiding trackers, and surviving on the land, Iana and Thomas reached a point where the terrain became less dangerous. They found a small, secluded valley, hidden by cliffs and thick trees. Here they could rest without the constant fear of being discovered. The valley became their sanctuary, a place where they could recover, plan, and strengthen their connection. In this quiet refuge, they began to imagine the next stage of their journey, a life not dictated by fear, but by love and freedom. The experience transformed both of them. Iana had grown more courageous and self-assured, learning to trust her instincts and rely on her own skills. Thomas had become more resourceful, patient, and aware of the world's challenges and possibilities. Together, they had faced unimaginable pressure and emerged stronger. The trials of the forest were more than physical. They were tests of character, trust, and the enduring power of human connection. In the quiet moments, when the sun rose and set over the hidden valley, they would sit together, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. They spoke of fear, love, hope, and survival. They understood that the path ahead was still uncertain, but they also knew that they could face it together. The forest had taught them lessons that could not be learned in comfort or safety, lessons of courage, loyalty, and the unyielding strength of love. Through the trials of escape and survival, Iana and Thomas realized that they were not merely fleeing danger. They were creating a life together, built on trust, resilience, and shared purpose. The forest, with all its beauty and danger, had become a teacher, a guide, and a witness to their bond. They had survived fear, uncertainty, and relentless challenges, and in doing so, they had discovered a truth far greater than the rules of any village or council. Love, courage, and loyalty could create a life worth fighting for, no matter the odds. After many days and nights of traveling through dense forests, over rugged hills, and along winding rivers, Ayanna and Thomas finally found a place that felt truly safe. It was a small valley far from the village they had left behind, hidden among tall trees and rolling hills. The valley was alive with the soft sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the songs of birds, and the gentle trickle of a stream. Here at last they could breathe freely, without the constant fear of being discovered. It was a place where they could begin building the life they had dreamed of, together. The first days in their new home were spent establishing safety and comfort. They built a small shelter using branches, leaves, and materials they had carried with them. It was simple, but it was theirs, and that gave them a sense of pride and ownership. Ayanna and Thomas worked side by side, each task bringing them closer together. They learned to rely on one another in ways they had never imagined, discovering strengths and skills in themselves that had been dormant until now. Every meal they cooked, every fire they built, every obstacle they overcame became a testament to their courage and unity. Life in the valley was not without its challenges. The land was untamed and resources were limited. Ayanna used her deep knowledge of plants, herbs, and wildlife to help them find food and medicine. Thomas hunted small game, gathered water, and learned to navigate the unfamiliar terrain. They faced storms that tested their shelter, wild animals that threatened their safety, and long stretches of exhaustion that pushed their bodies to the limit. Yet each challenge they overcame strengthened their bond. They discovered that working together, supporting one another, and trusting in their shared abilities could turn even the harshest difficulties into moments of growth and triumph. As the days turned into weeks, Ayanna and Thomas began to feel a sense of peace they had never known. The constant fear and uncertainty that had accompanied them since the whispers in the village faded slowly into the background. In its place grew hope, joy, and a quiet contentment. They could walk hand in hand without looking over their shoulders, speak freely without fear of judgment, and simply exist in the world as two people deeply in love. These moments of freedom, though simple, felt extraordinary to them. They appreciated every sunrise, every song of a bird, and every quiet night under the stars, knowing how close they had come to losing it all. In this new life, Ayanna and Thomas began to think about the future in ways they had never dared before. They spoke of building a home, planting a small garden, and creating a space where they could live in harmony with nature. They dreamed of a life where love, not fear, guided their choices. Each conversation about the future was filled with hope and excitement, a reminder that their struggles had led them to this moment. The valley had become more than a place of refuge. It was a symbol of their survival, their courage, and the life they could create together. The emotional growth they experienced was as profound as the physical challenges they overcame. Ayanna learned to trust not only Thomas but also herself, her instincts, and her ability to navigate the world. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. Thomas, too, grew in confidence and understanding. He realized that love required both strength and patience, sacrifice and care. Together, they learned to face difficulties with calm determination, to solve problems creatively, and to find joy even in the smallest victories. Even in the peace of the valley, memories of their past lingered. Ayanna sometimes thought of her family and the village she had left behind, feeling both sadness and pride. She mourned the separation from the people she loved, yet she also understood that her journey had been necessary for her freedom and her future. Thomas, too, reflected on the risks they had taken, the dangers they had faced, and the courage they had summoned. These reflections were not filled with regret, but with gratitude for each other, for the love that had given them strength, and for the lessons they had learned along the way. Over time, the couple began to find ways to contribute to the small communities and travelers they occasionally encountered. They offered knowledge of the land, shared guidance about survival, and told stories of courage and hope. Through these interactions, they discovered that their experiences could inspire others. Their journey had taught them that bravery, love, and compassion could create ripples far beyond their immediate lives. By helping others, they reinforced the values that had carried them through their own struggles. In the quiet moments, when the sun set behind the hills and the sky was painted with shades of gold and pink, Ayanna and Thomas would sit together by the stream. They spoke of everything, the challenges they had faced, the love that had grown between them, the dreams they now held. Each word, each story, was a reminder of the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. They understood that life would still present difficulties, but they also knew that nothing could diminish the strength of their bond. Their love had survived fear, judgment, and danger. It had proven its power and resilience. As months passed, the couple settled into a routine that balanced work, exploration, and moments of quiet joy. They planted a small garden, cultivated the land around their shelter, and learned to live harmoniously with the animals and natural elements of the valley. They discovered that even the simplest tasks, gathering water, preparing food, mending tools, could be transformed into acts of connection, creativity, and care when done together. Their home became a place of warmth, love, and safety, a sharp contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had marked their earlier days. Through their shared life, Ayanna and Thomas also reflected on the lessons of the past. They understood the cruelty and rigidity of the traditions that had once threatened to end their love, but they also recognized the resilience and wisdom within their own hearts. They learned that courage could challenge injustice, that love could inspire change, and that the human spirit could endure even the harshest trials. These reflections strengthened their sense of purpose, reinforcing the values that would guide them in the years to come. The story of Ayanna and Thomas became one of quiet legend in the region. Travelers who passed through the valley would sometimes speak of the couple who had faced impossible odds and built a life together, honoring love, courage, and loyalty. Though they did not seek recognition or fame, their journey inspired others to act with bravery, kindness, and perseverance in the face of adversity. Their story became a testament to the enduring power of love and the strength that could be found when two people stood together against the world. Even as time passed, Ayanna and Thomas never forgot the trials that had brought them here. They honored the lessons learned in the forest, the courage summoned in the council, and the loyalty that had carried them through danger. Their love, tested by fear, judgment, and survival, had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. Each day became a celebration of life, freedom, and the bond that had guided them through the darkest moments. In their final reflections, Ayanna and Thomas understood that the journey had changed them in ways that were profound and lasting. They had discovered that love could transcend boundaries, that courage could be found in even the smallest acts, and that life, though unpredictable and often harsh, could be beautiful and fulfilling when approached with hope and determination. They knew that their story was not just their own. It belonged to anyone who believed in the power of love, bravery, and the human spirit. As the sun rose and set over their hidden valley, Ayanna and Thomas sat together, hand in hand, gazing at the world they had fought to claim for themselves. They were no longer just a young Apache woman and a white man defying tradition. They were survivors, partners, and witnesses to the power of love against all odds. Their life was not perfect, but it was theirs, built on courage, resilience, and a commitment to one another that could never be broken. And so, in the quiet of the valley, among the trees and streams, Ayanna and Thomas found peace. They had faced fear, overcome danger, and built a life guided by love. Their story would live on, not only in the hearts of those who heard it but in the example it set. That love can triumph over judgment, courage can overcome fear, and the human spirit can endure, even in the face of the greatest challenges.